Through his professional career, he expressed the highest regard and great esteem for education and civil engineering. He received his degree from the University of Illinois. Mr. Kent dedicated himself to civic service in Illinois as well as in the surrounding states. He was the founder and president of the University of Illinois Civil Engineering Alumni Association and was the recipient of the U of I Loyalty Award and the Civil Engineering Distinguished Award. The Kent Distinguished Lecture are sponsored by the Paul F. Kent Memorial Fund, which was established in 1977 to support education in transportation engineering. Now we're going to come to our distinguished speaker. There is a big list here that I can go through, but I rather not to read anything and introduce him myself. He's a friend. He's one of the most distinguished professors in the field of the transportation engineering. He has been at Purdue University for a long time, and there is so many people that I worked with and became my colleagues who graduated from him. Some of the top people who became even officials in different countries has graduated with Dr. Sinha. But away from that, he was instrumental in the TRB. He's one of the leading people who changed the TRR into a journal. At the TNDI, he is one of the pioneers to establish the Transportation Development Institute as part of the ASCE. He's also an honorary member, which changed to distinguished member of the ASCE, and he's a member of the National Academy of Engineers. So I can keep going and going, but all I can tell you that you can see his imprint everywhere you go in transportation. He's one of the very few people who spans into the different areas in transportation. He works in the traffic, he works in maintenance, he works in transportation. So the people in the pavement areas, they know Kumares Sinha. The people in the traffic or the system side, they also know him. I had the pleasure to work with him closely here in the United States and in China. And it was always a pleasure to get to know him closely. So with that, it's indeed my pleasure to introduce Kumares to give our Kent lecture. Kumares?
You know, what does it mean? He does in all these areas, either that I'm jack of all trades, master of none, but, or I like to say I'm a general practitioner. You know, I do, like the general practitioners, medical, they do everything. So I like to feel that I'm one of those people. And also by being in the profession for 50 years, I started teaching in 1968. So this is exactly 50 years. It seems like time went very fast, but when you start thinking about the time, total time, 50 years, half a century. So I have seen the growth of this, our field. No, transportation engineering is a new field, relatively speaking, in civil engineering. And it's not entirely mechanics based. We use a lot of OR and other kinds of things that are not exactly, that has been exactly in civil engineering. Civil engineers who started, our basic thing is mechanics. And then environmental people are in biology and chemistry, that kind of areas. And transportation, beside the pavement part, may be mechanics based. But a big part of transportation is OR, operations research, and economics and statistics. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about charging mechanisms. Charging means pricing mechanisms for road use and the interface between engineering and public policy. There was a paper we published in the journal we have in the National Academy of Engineering, the Bridge, BRIDGE, 2 years ago, summer of 2016. So this paper basically taken from that, this presentation is from that paper. So I will give you some references. So the way I will do, I'll talk about these charging mechanisms and what are the possibilities, and I'll be talking about direct charging, the one I think the best way of doing things, and I will try to explain to you why it is going to happen, and you will see the connection. And also I'll hopefully give you some ideas if anybody is interested, some of the research issues that are involved. Now this is very timely because we haven't had a major change in our charging mechanism either in the country or in some of the states, particularly Midwest. I know Illinois is going through similar kind of soul searching, what is to be done. And in Indiana last year we changed, and I had the pleasure of working with the legislature in the past and also most recently in figuring out the highway taxation policies. So with that, let me start. Why we charge for road use? Now, this one is the most important as far as the highway departments are concerned. We need money in this country. We maintain, preserve, add to the capacity from road user charging, the gasoline tax. That's about 70-75%, depending on where you are. We also have two. We have federal tax and also we have state tax. Any question you have, you can stop me. I'd rather have less material covered and to your satisfaction rather than going through the whole thing. Or if you want to wait for the end, that's fine too, if you can remember your questions along the way. So most important thing that we use road user charging is to maintain and preserve and also add to the capacity of the highway system we have. And with the interstate system, when it came into being under Eisenhower administration, 1 nickel, 5 cents was charged for every gallon of fuel, and that's the beginning of the national funding for roads, and that gave the interstate funding, but that got into a lot of other things. 1979, mid-70s, part of the money, the highway trust fund money, started to go for transit, urban transit, in the buses and rails systems we have. So that's one thing. Then the other part that which does not get into really into our in the psyche is also we charge road use to internalize some of the things that the highways cause, like safety, congestion, those kind of externalities to incorporate. But we don't think consciously, but that's there. Also other things, to make sure that we do make the level playing field for different, like the truck versus rail. Like Chris is here, Chris Burke. By the way, I'm going back Tuesday. The railroad people are coming to talk to me. Why railroad people coming to talk about a highway user taxation? Because this level playing field, they feel that the legislature may increase the size and weight, and if there's, there is a particular weight and distance that trucks and rail, they compete. After that, rail has the advantage. The trucks cannot compete. So they want to make sure that anything that happens that does not upset that balance. Truck size and weight. So they want to make sure what we're doing, because they know we advise the legislature. And so there is a connection. You understand why the level playing field. And so this is the reason we do road user charge. And the Highway Trust Fund, I told you that we started, it was doing fine, and up until I cannot see, about 2015 or 2014, we are doing fine. We had money, not plenty, but we had money. But it started to be drawn out, and we are in the negative situation. So, and nothing has been done for a long time in either in the, this is the federal side, Highway Trust Fund, but also federal money gives a large part of our state funding comes also from the federal side. But individual states have their own taxation scheme too, and the same concepts, same ideas come into that. And most of the states have segregated and dedicated funds for highways. At any point, if something doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to stop me. So this is from the ASC, American Society of Civil Engineers. That's the infrastructure report card. Oftentimes people, the politicians, they think that ASC, we civil engineers, they exaggerate the need for funding. And it's not for today. If you look at some of the historical narratives, you will see some of the presidential, many years, 100 years, they would see that the civil engineers are advocating for the infrastructure funding we need. Very surprising. I saw some of the old, days of Grover Cleveland, that the civil engineers are telling that we need funding for things and roads and other things. So you see, there is already a gap, shortfall, which is backlog. Then we have the spending that we need to do. So about almost $950 to $1 trillion of funding need we have. Now, so what are the problems? Is the currently with the system we have is inadequate funding. No change in fuel tax rate in decades, increasing fuel efficiency, because this is another thing. Our national goal is to improve environment, conserve less energy, and carbon dioxide, less carbon dioxide, etc. In case you believe in carbon dioxide is not good. But if you believe carbon dioxide is good, then there's no problem. Also, the use of hybrid and electric vehicles, it doesn't use, hybrid doesn't use that much of gasoline, and electric vehicles don't use any. So we have problem with the, one side is that, the environment and et cetera, one goal, other goal is that we need funding to maintain and preserve and add to the capacity. So it's a conflicting goals. And so I already mentioned that last item is very important, lack of equity. Equity is not only between light duty vehicles and trucks, automobiles and trucks. Generally speaking, without looking into Illinois, I can sort of guess in Illinois, as in Indiana and many other states, automobiles, this cost subsidized trucks. Without looking, I can tell. But I cannot tell exactly what percent. It's generally about 30 to 40%, cross subsidy. So, so that's one, equity. And the second is, even among the trucks, you have different sizes, different weights. So there is also both the horizontal and vertical equity issues. So what are the possible solutions then? These are all standard. Increase the fuel tax rate. You increase the fuel tax rate. Many of the legislators don't like, and we don't like because it's not very efficient at all. Particularly, the damage to the road is not because of automobiles. Damage to the road because of trucks, truck weight and axle configuration. And we all know that as the weight is increased, the trucks, the damage is to the power of 4. So you cannot just raise fuel tax rate from few cents to few cents more. It's not linear. Is like this, exponential. So fuel tax is not a very good way of increasing marginal taxation. Also, some people, but it is a way. It is a piggybacking. That means you already have, you add to that. So this is convenient. Then some states have considered indexing to inflation or other measures like VMT growth and other ton-mile growth, or state registration fee. State registration fee is not that much. It's a small part, but still some states have done. It's not one thing. They're not mutually exclusive. You can do both or combination. And then, of course, in local areas, local tax for road use. You know, the people have done survey. They found that consumers do not mind when we raise tax if we can justify, or we can tell we're going to fix the particular road, US 45, between this and this using your tax money. Then people are sympathetic. So local tax rate you can increase by appealing to them, appealing to the taxpayers that it will be done for local roads and local use. But statewide it becomes difficult, and nationwide it becomes more difficult. And some cases they have done sales tax, the local or state sales tax. We don't have any national sales tax, and many states don't have any sales tax. Then local property tax. You may not know, local property tax provides funding for local roads, and particularly county roads. And I don't know, every state doesn't have the same kind of system, but most states have. And then the last one is the direct charging. Direct charging, well, I'll come to that, what it is. There are many things can be done, like tolling is a direct charging. But it's not the same thing that I'm going to propose or tell you, I want VMT fees, distance, either weight distance or not either, weight distance or regular distance for automobile, because the weight doesn't vary in automobiles. So indirect charging is the vehicle ownership registration, which is really entrance fee. That means you pay registration whether you use it or not. You keep in your garage, you pay the same money. But then usage, the second tier, that's the fuel tax we charge, and other taxes. We have quite a few small sundries. And that, I already mentioned, there are some problems with this way of doing. So not only me, but everybody, that those who think about these things, we think that direct charging is a better way. And direct charging time has come because we're going to have autonomous vehicles. Everything robot will do. So it will be, if the cars and trucks can see things going around and drive itself, then also can keep track of how many miles we are driving and where we are driving, and can figure out how much taxation we'll have to pay or how much fee we have to pay. So it is coming. It's not a far-fetched dream. It's going to happen. The issue is when you're going to start it, sooner the better. And technology is already there. So direct user charge, some of the mechanisms, the issues, the dimensions. Well, if we do consider tolling, then what facility type, what coverage for which fee is charged, point at which payment is made if we tolling, which is a standard thing, how, where we will be paying, at what point, and basis for the charge, how much we figure out, what how many cents per mile, or is a flat fee or what. There are a lot of options, a lot of research can be done if you think about this, and what is the appropriate technology. And these are some of the types. Road toll, which is everybody, Illinois has, Indiana has. Congestion pricing is one. It's also direct charging, but only a particular area where you expect congestion. Cordon fees like Singapore or HOT lanes, those things are all designated areas. But the last one, the distance or weight distance based fees, which is statewide or region-wide, I think it will be nationwide. I don't know how many of you know of IRP, International Registration Plan, or IFTA, International Fuel Tax Agreement. So I worked on the IRP, the International Registration Plan. Oh, before we had IRP, we used to have Illinois and Indiana had an agreement that trucks will go their state and our trucks will go their state. So we reconciled, we made it all uniform, the provinces in Canada and United States. And before Indiana joined in that compact, I did the study to show that how we should do, what kind of charges. So IFTA is, IRP is based on miles driven. How many miles you have driven, your truck has driven in every state. IFTA, same thing. We keep track of the miles. So that as far as the trucks are concerned, it's there. It can be done. We may not have the ton. That's a little angle, if you want to make a weight distance, but we know the VMTs, truck VMTs, where they're going and how many miles they're driving. So if it is, then why not we impose use that for weight distance tax or distance tax. There are many ways it can be done. We can do direct charging just as a part of registration fee. We'll talk about that and come to that in a minute. Now let me tell you, if we want to use charging as the main way, the major or primary objective is to pay for maintenance and preservation and capacity building. If that's what is our purpose, that means self-financing our highway infrastructure, how should we go about it? How should we go about? So there I'm going to show you that the ways that we do. And that's the cost allocation. We have to figure out where the costs accrued, who is causing the cost and how much cost, and where the revenue is coming from. And from that, we do that. Accounting of cost and revenues. Then to do that, your road use, you have to create an inventory. Then we allocate. Now that's where it's one line here. Allocate costs and revenues to user groups, but that's where comes engineering. Most of the things I've talked so far, I've been telling, is a public policy issue, it's figuring out the legislature. But here comes the engineering, allocation of cost and revenues to particular vehicles for the exact use of the road system we have. And then cost responsibility, who should pay how much, or who owes how much, and who already paying how much. That means through your fuel tax, registration fee, and other things. And user group, when you talk about, the user group, the picture is here, but it's not there. I'll show you in a minute. So our motivation is, the target is a revenue over cost should be 1. So everybody pays. It's not always possible, but that's what our objective. Then nobody cross-subsidizes somebody else. That's the ideal for any kind of taxation. So this is our user groups we use, that the federal highway, the 13 types of vehicles. And most of the two most important categories here is the Class 2 and Class 9. Class 2 is the automobiles, the standard automobiles, and Class 9 is this 18-wheelers, 5-axle. That's the most common trucks that we have on the road. So Class 1 to Class 13, it's not that easy to say increasing physical degradation of pavements and bridges. 1 is the least and 13 is the most. That's not exactly right, because axle configuration and even double bottom may not be as much damaging as, depends on what kind of load and axles we have. But generally speaking, as we add to the weight and to the size, then we have more damage to the road. And also, that's for the load, and the size comes the operational impairment. Now, if we have just separate automobiles and trucks, we don't have to have our highways, the lane in the freeways, lanes 12 feet. we can do away with 12-feet highways. In fact, if the automated highways come, I would envision it would be segregated. Trucks will have a different lane and automobiles have a separate lane, because then we can save a lot of money, and money not only in the pavement width, but also in having the same space we can use to put more lanes. So that comes from the truck size. And so there comes the capacity, the traffic part, there comes the passenger car equivalency. So this is, I'm going to show you now in Indiana, this is the vehicle miles of travel by user or vehicle class that we just did recently for the legislature. And the relative exact numbers may not be same, but the relative sizes, I bet same thing in Illinois. So 63% automobiles travel will be the largest part, and then the single unit trucks and the buses, like the vans and large or extended cab trucks, the light duty, but they're extended, they will be next, they will come. And then comes the class 9. 9 is in the corner, this one, 9. This is the vehicle class, this type, and this is the automobiles here. Now, okay, so well, you'll have to keep track of those things. So we know that it is number 2 and the reason is that number 9, the vehicle miles of travel may not be that much, but it's the effect on the road is much higher than, it's not just all same. Are you with me? They cause the most damage. So and they also pay, but not proportionally. They're not exactly what they should pay. So how do we allocate the pavement cost? For new construction, minimum base, as if we are starting, minimum base facility, and we allocate that to the VMT. Minimum, if we have the bare minimum, a Volkswagen Beetle using everything, then what will be or the smart vehicles, we see, what is the bare, 4.5 inch or whatever, we can, every state has a specification. Then we put additional layers to accommodate increasing weight class. And that we distribute by equivalent single axle loads and miles. It's a complicated process, by the way. It's not that simple. And so for today purpose, I have to leave it right there unless you have questions. Then we also spend money for maintenance and rehabilitation. There comes the issue of load and non-load. How much of the maintenance is because of the weight and how much is because of the environment? Some people will say, oh, all is because of environment. Some people will say, all because of load. Not only that, there is an interaction between load and non-load. And figuring out that is a complex task. Most of the time what they do, they ask a whole bunch of people like Imad and those who have worked in these areas, what do you think? Like we had a guy, Eldon Yoder, Professor Yoder, he was my colleague at Purdue. We used to debate all the time, we used to discuss these issues because I started working on this thing because of him. Before I came to Purdue, I was not into pavements. But anyway, the law is a complicated process. Different ways can be done, and we have a way of doing. And, well, maybe you'll ask questions, we'll look into that. Then bridges. The major part of our expenditure we have is a pavement related. But we also have bridges. And we spend a lot of money in fixing bridges, replacing. So there also we have to do, figure out how much we allocate. Now bridge becomes very complicated because it has a lot of subsystems. Pavements is also a system, but it doesn't have that many elements, that many subsystems. Maybe different layers and subgrade, subbase, base, like that. But bridges have lots of elements. And so that's one thing. Second thing is that bridges are designed according to AASHTO design code. If anybody is here, AASHTO vehicles are different from operating vehicles. Did you hear? The bridges are designed by using AASHTO HS20, H25, and they are not the same as 1 to 13 federal highway, the vehicles we see on the road. So operating vehicles and design vehicles are different. So we'll have to figure out some way how to commensurate, reconcile this. So there is a task. Well, we do that using the critical stress. And there is again, we work with the structural engineers and figure out that, generally all of us are civil, or those of us are civil engineers. We did some of these things even though we are in transportation now. Moment and stress, moment and shear. And moment is the bending moment is the critical issue. Okay, so what do we do that the cost allocated proportionally by vehicle class according to stress they cause using AASHTO design vehicles, and then we do that statistical correlation with using the stress level between AASHTO design vehicles and federal highway operating vehicles. So how do we allocate? A big part, okay, so we figure out all the costs, then we ask ourselves how much of this we can attribute to trucks. I didn't mention, there are costs, not just costs. You have, if you are doing construction, you have grading, you have of all kinds of different kinds of things that segregate, you can differentiate, and you'll have to, all of them have different allocation factors for different vehicles, vehicle class. So it's a huge, humongous cost accounting, but that is done. Okay, after we do everything, we find a big part of all the costs you cannot attribute. You cannot say how much is that for trucks, how much for automobile, and not to say how much is the single unit trucks versus the double bottoms or the 18-wheelers. You cannot tell. So what happens to them? They are all common costs. So common cost we put VMT, and then a certain cost I can attribute to the trucks, but I cannot tell how much of this because of the single unit trucks or combination trucks. And there, and I go to PCE VMT. Am I with you? So we know VMTs by vehicle class, and I know the PCE, so I use that PCE VMT. So this is the cost responsibility in Indiana, not Illinois, in Indiana. Again, the relative sizes will remain the same, I bet you, in Illinois, but not exact, the numbers. So class 1 was the motorcycles. Class 2 to 3, you see that they pay 2 cents per mile, their cost responsibility. And classes 4 to 7, they're single trailer trucks, single unit trucks, and that's between 16 cents per mile, and 8 to 10, 12 cents, and 11 to 13, they are larger, they're different units, trailer, combination of trailers, not one trailer, that's 15 cents per vehicle mile. Now this is only one side, is the cost side. You'll have to look into the revenue side, and well, I did not show you the revenue side. There is similar kind of thing done. Then after you do that, then you find the revenue, cost over revenue. Is the cost over revenue or revenue over cost? Either way, it has to be one. So this shows what we found in our, we did a study in 1984-85 data in Indiana, and that's the last time in Indiana any major change in highway taxation was done. Thoroughly we changed on the basis of our study. And then it says 87, it's really 84, 85, but 87, the paper, the people, the students, they always refer to the paper. The reference is to the 87 paper. And there are other states where they are. And this is our latest, Indiana 2015. This is the latest. So this particular number 2, they are overpaying. Those who are in the above the line 1, they're overpaying, and these are the underpaying classes. Motorcycles don't cause that much of damage. It's not that big a deal. But the number 9 here, this is the big deal. Number 9. And so this is the way you do. And then if it is not equitable, then you'll have to figure out what we can do, or we propose how we can make more equitable, bring everybody or close to 1. Now, so with this is just if we want to self-finance highways, and then from these numbers we can also figure out how much we should then charge, what is the optimal charge for the different vehicle classes if we have a direct charging procedure. And there are different kinds of technologies that are available, and technologies are continuously changing. And this is the, if we do in a system, the local areas, if you want to keep track, so the tolling and other purposes, then you can have certain technologies like automated the license plate number checking, like they do in China. They keep track for other purpose, not for the cost allocation or taxation, but for sending the red light running or speeding, etc., etc. They use that. And so that one, but it can be used for tolling because you can figure out how many miles you're going, where you're going. Or you can have the DSRC, that's again the same thing, automated vehicle identification. Or better thing, the best thing is the satellite, using satellite, GPS. And these things have been tested. We did national studies, University of Iowa did, and they use this, how we can use global positioning system, having a unit in your on board and keep track of your miles and where you are going. But there are a lot of other issues like privacy concern. People find out where I went, etc. So it does not require in roadside infrastructure. And then also cellular networks also does not require. It can be somewhere, big towers and keep track of the vehicles. It can cover larger coverage area, may not be exactly like the satellite systems. So there are different kinds of technologies. Now it is this technology changing so fast that I think the direct charging is right here. You just need political will. So then comes the issue of the payment. How do I pay? Once I figure out monitor and assess, then how do I pay? There are lots of other several possibilities. In Singapore, they have onboard unit, and that's like a debit card. It keeps track. You pay money ahead, and then it deducts from there. Onboarding, how many miles you go, they deduct the money, and you can use smartphones, electronic payment if a tolling system, and then pay at the pump as you go take gas. You can just look right there how many your odometer and pay at the pump, or inspection stations. And the inspection stations, I don't know how many we still have them or not, but some places they have inspection stations for maintenance. We used to have when we're concerned about environment. So I even think the possibility to make it happen, we can combine with the registration. When you pay registration, we give people, tell us voluntarily, you self-declare how many miles you travel per year. So somebody says 5,000 or less, flat fee, 5 to 10,000, another flat fee, 10 to 15, like that. That's what the truckers do, is a self-reporting, how many miles they're driving. And then at the end, well, for automobiles it doesn't make much difference, but the trucks they do, they will pay, then they rebate they get if they travel less. Or if not, they will pay extra. And then what they do, this is done with the IFTA and IRP, there will be random checking, and if they have cheated you, then they get fined. So it can be done, not precisely. It's not the economists like to see exactly day and the time and the location, etc. It's not that precise, but still you can start thinking or charging direct user charge or direct fee. So there are some costs involved, infrastructure and equipment, if you want to use equipment. And when I talked to the Indiana legislature, I told them that, look, because they always get concerned, your capital cost, they get very concerned. So I said, well, you don't have to do that. You can use much cheaper way, you can start. But they didn't want to use. I saw that same thing in Illinois. Some proposal was made last year or year before, and legislators from the rural area, they said, oh, no, rural area will get, they'll be disproportionately affected. But it's a wrong argument. I'll explain to you in a minute. Then the operating costs, administration, upgrade, maintenance, etc. Now, Oregon DOT made some estimates. There are some estimates, different kinds of estimates, different places, but in between 5 to 10%. Then also collection costs, not only monitoring, but collection costs, sending bill, or there are also all kinds of ways it can be done. But these examples I have here, these are not a national system that I'm thinking. This is our congestion pricing, like London, Stockholm. Singapore is a tolling system. And user few $100s or less than few $100 you can use onboard unit. So it's a small amount. And then of course you have to pay mileage fee. In Oregon they estimated 1.56 cents. Minnesota they had 1 cent per mile off peak and 3 cents per mile peak period, they estimated. But this is not even a big deal. You can do today how much you pay for your gasoline or diesel tax and what is the average fuel efficiency. You can combine, gallons per mile and cents per mile. So if you do that, you can figure out that in Indiana it will be 0.75 cents per mile. Then you say, if I want to replace the fuel tax, okay, not the additional on the top of that. A lot of people don't like additional because it's there's double taxation. Okay, so requirements of road user, easy to understand, convenience, multiple payment option. If you make it too complicated for old people like me, it may be confusing. Also transparency, and biggest issue is the privacy. Oh, you'll find out I went to the bar or a pub or whatever, or other places. Then requirements, highway agency. Highway agency want to make sure minimum traffic impact, efficiency, flexible, scalability. You can, interoperability is another issue, and security, enforceability, etc. Most important is you have adequate funding. Now, in 1985, when we proposed to the Indiana legislature, they were very sympathetic. They almost came very close. But then what happened, the truckers, they did not want this thing, so they went and told the legislators, ask these guys, what will be the cost of administering this thing? We didn't have these numbers. Legislators asked. We said, oh, well, we didn't think about this. That's it. It went down, zoom. And at that time, 10 states in the United States had some form of weight distance tax. Today we don't have. Well, Oregon perhaps. Because you know why? The truckers took the states to the court. And general public like to see that there is a benefit and cost, that we get net benefits, political acceptability, and very important thing is interoperability. Things like Illinois has a system, Indiana has a system, Wisconsin has, they can go the regional thing. I like to see national. Okay, these are some of the pilot studies were done, distance-based DMC, and the latest I know the Federal Highway has given grants, 12 DOTs. I think it's a part of that or not. I understand Illinois has 5,000 trucks. This is mine. Okay. So that there are 5,000 trucks they have been experimentally, they're using distance-based fees voluntarily. And then now what are the threats? Once it is done, the institutional problems, equity issue, that the truckers should always, they're eager to go to court, and how much you have enough money or not, and of course public acceptance. Now let me tell you something, because time is running out. We don't have a universal DUC anywhere except in Singapore. Okay? Singapore is a special case because it's a small area. One country almost came, all set to start, that Netherlands, about 4 or 5 years ago. But then the government changed. Nothing to do with the DUC, but the government changed and it went away. And some of the examples we have here, Edinburgh, Manchester, New York, their example, their proposal. New York, we thought that there will be something in Manhattan, congestion pricing, but not going to happen. And one important point, if you, those of you who work in this area, that you estimate VMT, you must adjust. Economists like to see that elasticity value, you check so that the VMT, as soon as the cost of doing something goes up, then that VMT will be should be adjusted. These are some of the VMTs, elasticities we figured for different kinds of vehicles with respect to fuel tax, which is cost of travel. Now this is the some of the distance-based charging that Tariq came up with. Can you see this thing? Yeah, there are some possibilities that some of the people suggested and came up, their studies they came up with that here that you have. And then this is, I'm going to show you, I'm coming to the very end pretty soon. This I'm going to show you that all the possible options. When I started, I told indexing, changing fuel tax, whole bunch of other sales tax, ad valorem tax, all those. Then these are, for Indiana, we looked into all the possible options and simulated in future, and it turns out that the DUC, of course, we start today, revenue neutral, then you'll have to increase that, keep up. So 1% increase, 2% or 3%, very small amount. So think of 1% or 0.7%, 0.7 cents, very little. So, but you keep up, all of these options, it comes out that DUC is the best option. But anyway, we started to, we told the legislature then, now that very recently, our legislature, they were thinking of changing the taxation, and guess what they decided to do? They decided all these arguments and this, that, they decided to add more to the fuel tax because it's easy. piggybacking. We call piggybacking. We already have. You just add a little bit extra to your piggyback. So that's the way. I don't know, Illinois, there are a lot of discussion going on. What is going on right now? I don't know whether any resolution has taken place or not. But they also did something which is very damaging. They added $100 for every unit of electric vehicles, which will, it's again, you're working again national goal. But that's their privilege. And in this argument, when we're talking at the legislature, there are legislators, they said, oh, it is very unfair for what you are proposing, this VMT tax, very unfair to the rural people. Why? Because they travel a lot. So they travel a lot, yes, but they pay gas tax. It's not free for the rural people. So you pay the same amount you pay for gas tax, you pay for VMT fee. But this didn't go in their head. So what are the research issues? The right amounts of distance or weight distance charging rates to figure out. How to design dynamic pricing, that the economists like to see. The time of day, location, like a congested area. How to achieve equity. That I gave you an example between the different vehicle types. Geographic locations, rural versus urban, like the legislators always bringing up. What is the transition path from fuel tax based pricing to direct charging? I had to name, drop. I was a member of the Blue Ribbon panel for the congressionally mandated study of revenue some years ago towards the end of Bush administration, but it was Congress. And that report, didn't get much because, administration change, nobody paid much attention at that paid. But there was, and it's a Republican, majority was Republican members of the commission. They recommended, and they said, the fuel tax based taxation is obsolete. We should raise the fuel tax right now in the interim period 40%. And we figure out how we're going to implement VMT tax. Again I repeat, it was a Republican commission. Although the lady who is to be the Secretary of Transportation at that time, what's her name? Mary, what's her last name? But she was a co-chair. She had a minority report. She didn't agree with that because it doesn't jibe with the Republican concept of charging anything. So coming back to this, that the transition path is very important. If we go from here to the field, the DUC, how we transition. We cannot do overnight or go gradually or just add it to it, or these are issues. What are the costs and benefits of different kinds of mechanisms? There are lots of mechanisms, ways it can be done. What combination of direct charging mechanisms should be pursued? Should we have cut down maybe the better way will be cut down the fuel tax into half, and the other half you compensate by direct use tax, or some kind of things, combination can be done, or completely get rid of the fuel tax, or put the fuel tax in the general revenue, or what monitoring system, what collection method, public acceptability. There are some federal highway grants to several states looking to public acceptability, and what are the public outreach. The other side is how to outreach program. So. Conclusion, distance-based DUC is the most appropriate and sustainable road pricing mechanism. Right now what we have, fuel tax-based taxation, is not sustainable. It's not. So success depends on how well concerns of key holders are resolved, and challenge is to keep up with the rapidly changing technologies. And logical integration with, and this is, as I said, it is a logical extension of autonomous transportation. And it's there. It can be done. And these are some of the references if some student here are more interested to look at where I got my material. So I thank you very much. I'll be happy. I don't know how much time you have and what you want to do. I'll be happy to sort of exchange your ideas and what you feel about this. Okay, thank you. How do I turn it off?
Yeah. We'll take a few questions and we're going to have a reception outside, so maybe we can have more discussion outside. So, yeah, look, I'll pass that.
Okay. Listen, he's with me because I don't hear very well. He'll have to interpret.
All right. Thanks for the talk, Professor. It was inspiring. So my question is that you identified two variables in your direct charging framework. One of them was vehicles mile travel, VMT. The other one was easel, applied load. So my question is that what about the third variable, which is the load carrying capacity of the infrastructures? Let's say we have at one truck, same weight, and both of these trucks goes 10 miles, but one of them is going in the highway, the other one is going in the local road, which has much bigger payment structure. So I'm just wondering your vision about how we are going to integrate that. I don't know if it is a significant detail or not, but I just want to.
No. So we didn't go into great detail. When we do the cost accounting, the allocation of cost, they're done by system. That means interstate, different designs. Absolutely, load carrying capacity. So did I answer right? That when we estimate how much damage is being caused, that the cost occasion to fix things is done by system. That means we separate local roads, we separate state roads, the US roads and interstates, with different design. It's a very elaborate system that the different states use. Federal Highway has a package, and consultants will be very happy to sell you a package, but it's all done a very detailed estimate. Yes, please.
You spoke briefly about environmental versus vehicle loading causing damage to the roads and how we deal with that. But as far as I'm aware, except in exceptional circumstances, most of the time vehicles that cause the most damage without extreme climate, would cause the same damage during, due to environmental loading at the same time. So if you have, for instance, a storm or something, a truck would still cause more damage than a car. So do you think that this is really a, how are you going to deal with that? It's not like you can fix the
how
climate.
do you separate? Yes.
Also, don't you think that, fuel efficiency should take part in the way you, rate cars and make them pay fuel efficiency of different models? Whether
I'm not being able to hear you very well, but I am guessing that what you're asking me, how do you figure out the load versus non-load? Is that right? How environmental effect and the load effect, right? I'll tell you, there are several ways it can be done. First, most people do asking people, what do you think? What do you think? Being bunch of experts, and as I say, I think 10%, down 10%, 80%. So 80 plus 10 is 90 plus divide by 2, 45%. Put the 45%. That's the most naive way of doing. Well, by the way, that was done years ago. But there are other ways. One way it can be like this. If you know the expenditures that were done, historical numbers you have, okay, like MEPDG, we keep track, you're supposed to do the maintenance, all the cost in your system. So if you know where the money was spent, where means what system, local roads, state road, interstate, all these different, you have over a period of time, okay? Also, if you know the weather conditions, also if you know the load, the trucks, either easel or cumulative, like all the profile, the load profile. Take them and regress the cost against that, then take the coefficients from the regression equation. That's one way, right? The other ways can be done. You can take the design we do, the design, when you're designing highway, using AASHTO design equations, and you say that's for load. Or some non-load is there, but that's mainly for road, primary road. And then, for the same place that you have designed a road for, and you have historical data for whatever your index for the condition of the road, PSI or whatever, IRI you have, you plot that. You plot the PSI you get from AASHTO equation and PSI, actual PSI. The difference of that is we call environment. Okay? Then it's not done yet. It's not done yet because that's a load. And now how do I also take part of this is the interaction. Interaction, how do I figure out? And that can be done by proportionality factor. We wrote all, these are all in the literature, by the way. So there are several ways, but still it's a holy grail. People are always trying to figure out this thing. Yeah.
We're going to take the last two questions.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, not surprisingly, an excellent and very interesting talk. I'd like to make one observation really right about your first couple of slides, which we don't have to go there, but it seems to me one of the implicit reasons for, or the rationale for what you're proposing and discussing here, but you didn't explicitly say it, is the economic efficiency of the economy, the efficiency of the economy. If you have systems where you're cross-subsidizing, then, you know, it's going to drive excess consumption that doesn't lead us to an efficient outcome.
That's exactly.
And so, you know, that's true within modes, but it's also true between modes. So, you know, I would just humbly offer that you could probably
absolutely
say
correct.
This explicitly in your
No, that's there. That's why I was telling that the line I had one, we like to bring everybody close to the one, there is no cost. And also the mode you said, when I did for 35 years ago, the first time this kind of work, when I was doing, railroad people were constantly coming and checking what I'm doing. And then this time, recently we did, no railroad people showed up. So I said, geez, are they happy or they're gone or what? Lo and behold, I think the word went out that something happening in Indiana. 17th of April, they are coming to sit down and talk to us. We're open. We'll tell exactly, great detail. We'll explain what they want to see. They want to make sure they stick it to the truckers. And the truckers want to make sure that you don't do that. You know, long time, the first time we did, I was presenting a paper at TRB. And there, the Trucking Association came, and they disrupted the presentation. You know, they're like a bust knuckles. The truckers, isn't any trucker here? The brass knuckles, and they distributed things to the audience, telling all kinds of things. You know, it's really bad. Unfortunately, at that time, TRB's chair of TRB ExCom was Tom Donahue, who was also eventually became the Chamber of Commerce guy. But so the Trucking Association was deeply involved. So this was a very bad, mean way they were treating me, or those of us who worked on this. So this is very important. Railroad people are very, very interested to see this modal balance, the equity between modes, railroad versus, because as I said at the beginning, there is a certain mileage, 750 miles or so, and certain distance, they're competitive. Then after that, it becomes haywire. Okay.
Last question.
Okay, last question, please.
Enjoyed very much your talk. Thanks a lot again. Coming back to your, all your talk at the same time in your conclusions, you said just dealing with gas tax isn't probably the way, and we need to go into VMT, DUC. I agree with that. coming back to federal versus state taxing currently, I mean, federal has been flat for years, but when you look at state taxes, there's a huge variety. I mean, there's a really very small amount to going to very high amounts. And how is that helping any state, or how is that not helping maybe the difference between the state and federal funding and the way that actually states are getting federal aid? Can you comment on that?
Yeah. You know, this is the current philosophy is transferring responsibility for infrastructure to the states. And well, if you stop and think about it, this is not the new thing. It has been going on for a long time. If I recall, you know, I heard this kind of statement. Now, first of all, why federal government is involved? Why we are involved in road infrastructure, federal government? This is the same argument in China too, you know. And by the way, I've done a lot of work in China. The reason is that you have to have a system that is funded, only the federal government can do, unless, if you leave it to the individual states, then as you are driving to the west, boom, you come to Montana, and there, you know, the cows are roaming around the rural roads. You don't have money, you don't have enough people, not enough. If you're from Montana, please excuse me, it's not that terrible, but it becomes different kinds of standards using concessionaires, toll roads, only the places where you have lots of traffic, there you will have, and then as soon as you leave that, then it's a poor standard. So you don't have an integrated one system from New York to Los Angeles. So that's why federal government got involved. However, one can make an argument, we have the basic system in place now. And if it is in place, maintenance and addition, etc., maybe the states will take care. You know, I'm not saying that is true. I'm not saying, but that's the concept, that's the idea. Now, coming back, right now the thought is the federal government actually right now, and it's the way our federal administration thinking is, now again, for President Trump is what he's thinking today, what he'll be thinking tomorrow, we don't know. But what general feeling is that it's a job is to be done by the states, or if the federal does anything, it should be public-private partnership. And nobody asked him, or nobody asked the people who said PPP. It's not free. What is PPP? You know, you are investing money. You will ask the return from that, right? There is no private sector going to give money out of goodness of heart. They want some rate of return. And that, where does that come from? Is taxation. You pay toll or whatever you pay. So it's not a free money, you know. It's so that's that. Now coming back to the state, the whole idea why the states are paying more attention and raising. Like I saw Illinois, the latest one I saw that somebody proposing 85 cents per gallon, the fuel tax. Now I didn't check whether it's for trucks or for diesel or gasoline. But 85 cents either way is a very high number. And I don't think we have 85 cents anywhere in this country that much. I know 40 cents, but not 85 cents. So the reason is that states, they have to do something because they are close to the people. And as you go down, federal is too far away. People don't pay. So they have to do. So that's the reason. Now I want to correct one thing. I want to make sure that I didn't leave you with the idea, oh, well, gas tax is all right, you know, this, that. No, I didn't say that. I said the best you can do to get enough money to maintain and preserve and do the things you want to do right now, the way the system is perhaps to put fuel tax because it's a piggyback and the it is easier to get to the legislators. You know, unless you have very good bunch of legislatures are progressive and broad-minded and looking ahead. Okay, thank you.
Please join me in thanking.
Okay, thank you.